All right, so Bitcoin to the moon. Is that it? Is that the dream? $1 million a coin.
$1 million Bitcoin. You've got charts. You've got predictions.
We've got a whole country jumping in head first. I mean, buckle up, right?
It's a wild
That's what
rose.
we're diving into today. We got this article we're looking at, kind of breaks down this Bitcoin enthusiast, Brandon Keys.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
And he's predicting, get this, 17.5x growth.
Whoa.
Like, he put a very specific number on it,
That's a bold claim.
which honestly makes me want to listen.
Right.
Like, he's put it all out there. And one of the big things he keeps pointing to is Bitcoin's past performance.
Right. That whole roller coaster from $4,000 to $70,000.
Exactly. I mean, he's basically saying, hey, history could repeat itself. And if you got in early.
You're sitting on a gold mine.
Right. So I got to ask, what do you think? You've been looking at the markets way longer than I have. Is this past performance thing legit, or is that a bit of a red flag?
Well, the thing about the market is it loves to prove us wrong. But that $4,000 to $70,000 run, that wasn't just luck. You had this perfect storm brewing, new investors piling in, the media couldn't get enough of it.
Oh, yeah. Everyone and their grandma was talking about Bitcoin back then.
Exactly. And that creates this fear of missing out, right? So the price gets pushed higher and higher. The question is, are those same ingredients in the mix today? To the same extent. That's what I'd be looking at.
That's a good point. So it's not as simple as just looking at the charts and saying, oh, it went up before, it'll go up again.
Nope. Definitely not that simple.
Okay, so then there's this whole quantitative easing thing.
QE.
Keys seems to think that's a good thing for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Honestly, I always get tripped up on this. Can you, break it down for us? How does printing more money, because that's basically what QE is, right?
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
How does that lead to Bitcoin being worth more?
Okay, so picture this. You've got a seesaw. On one side, you've got your traditional currencies, your dollars, your euros, the usual suspects. Now, imagine every time a government uses quantitative easing, they're adding weight to that side of the seesaw by, like you said, essentially printing more money.
Okay, I'm picturing it. So more money equals a heavier seesaw.
Exactly. But here's the thing. The more weight you add, the less each individual unit of that weight is worth. So the value of each dollar, each euro, it goes down. That's inflation.
And that's bad. Inflation's no good.
Right. And then on the other side of this seesaw, you've got Bitcoin. And the crucial difference here, Bitcoin has a fixed supply. No one's printing more Bitcoin. So as that traditional currency side gets weighed down, the Bitcoin side starts to rise.
Oh, interesting. So it's not so much that Bitcoin's suddenly worth more in some absolute sense.
Yeah.
It's more like those traditional currencies are potentially becoming less valuable.
Precisely.
And that relative shift is where investors see an opportunity.
Exactly.
I get it. Like, if everyone suddenly has more money to spend, your rare Beanie Baby collection just got a whole lot more valuable.
There you go.
Because there's only so many of those in the world.
Limited edition, baby.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. So is that kind of what we're seeing now with, well, everything kind of costing an arm and a leg?
It's definitely playing a role. People are feeling that pinch, that erosion of their purchasing power, and they're looking for somewhere to put their money where it's not going to just evaporate.
Right. So some people are turning to Bitcoin, seeing it as a potential hedge against that inflation.
Exactly. It's a bet
A bet on the future.
that this alternative system, this decentralized thing, might just weather the storm a little bit better than the old ways.
Fascinating. But Keys doesn't stop there. He takes this whole thing global. He starts talking U.S. and BRICS tensions, almost like we're headed for like a financial Cold War, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the connection to Bitcoin there? Is it like the Switzerland of money?
That's an interesting way to put it. But yeah, in a way, that's what Keys is getting at. Bitcoin doesn't play by those old rules. It doesn't belong to any one country, any central bank. So it can't really be manipulated in the same way.
So you're in a country, maybe their economy is a bit shaky, or you're just not so keen on how the global power dynamics are playing out. Bitcoin offers you an out, a way to opt out of the system.
That's the pitch. The question is, how realistic is it?
Right. How bumpy is that road to this new financial world order going to be?
And is Bitcoin really the answer? There are still a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin as a safe haven, that's a catchy headline. But Keys also throws out this term, hyper-Bitcoinization. That's kind of intense, right? What is that exactly?
Well, it's kind of like it sounds, hyper-Bitcoinization. It's this idea that Bitcoin goes from like this niche thing, a novelty almost, to the main event, like the form of money globally.
So everyone's walking around buying their groceries with Bitcoin,
Yeah.
tipping their robot baristas with Satoshis.
Well, that's the vision, right? Keyes actually lays out a couple of ways he sees this happening. One's a bit, dramatic, shall we say.
Well, let's hear it.
The old sudden collapse scenario. Imagine the financial system as we know it, just poof, gone. Banks are kaput, currencies are worthless, everyone's scrambling.
So like apocalypse movie stuff, but with more Bitcoin memes.
Pretty much. But in that kind of chaos, something like Bitcoin, which exists outside of that traditional system, it suddenly starts to look pretty appealing.
Right, because it's decentralized, no one's in control but the code, right?
Exactly. No government to bail out the banks, no central bank to print more money and make things worse. Just pure algorithmic scarcity.
So in that scenario, Bitcoin goes from a gamble to a life raft.
Potentially. Now, the other path is a little less Mad Max, a little more slow.
Okay, so less end of the world, more slow and steady wins the race.
You got it. Imagine Bitcoin adoption just keeps ticking upward. More businesses accept it, more people use it for everyday transactions. It just kind of seeps into the cracks of the system.
And eventually?
Eventually you hit a tipping point. Enough people are using it, relying on it, that it surpasses the old ways. Not because the old system crashed, but because it just got outpaced.
Wow. Okay, so two very different paths to the same destination. That's a lot to unpack. But let's say, hypothetically, we get to this Bitcoin utopia or whatever you want to call it. What does everyday life actually look like in this world according to Keyes?
Well, he points to El Salvador, right? They took the plunge, made Bitcoin legal tender. You can buy stuff there with it, pay your taxes, the whole 9 yards.
All right, they went all in. But how's it actually working out? I imagine it can't be all sunshine and laser beams.
There are definitely bumps in the road. Volatility, for one. We've all seen how wildly the price of Bitcoin can swing. Imagine trying to run a business that way.
Yeah.
Or budget for your family.
Yeah, that's got to be tough. Sorry, the price of milk went up 0.0005 Bitcoin since yesterday.
Exactly. And then there are the technical hurdles. Not everyone has easy access to the internet, to smartphones, to the tech you need to use Bitcoin. And that can create a whole new set of inequalities.
A digital divide, but with money.
Exactly. And then, of course, you've got the governments. They're still trying to figure out what to do with all of this. Regulations can change overnight, and that creates uncertainty for everyone.
It's interesting because on the one hand, you've got this vision of a more decentralized future. People taking control of their own finances, breaking free from the old constraints.
More power to the people. Right.
Exactly. But on the other hand, it's a gamble. It's putting a lot of faith in this technology, this idea that's still very much in its infancy.
It's the Wild West out there. Do we even have the right tools for this new world?
So is it even possible to say who's right? Is Bitcoin going to change the world, or is it going to crash and burn?
If anyone tells you they know the answer to that, they're selling something. But here's the thing. Even if Bitcoin itself doesn't become this global currency.
Even if it's not the chosen one.
Exactly. The technology behind it, the blockchain, that's already having a huge impact. And that's just going to keep growing.
So where does that leave someone listening to us right now? Let's say they're like, okay, this is wild. Decentralized future, maybe. Volatility, I don't know about all that. What's a good first step if they want to wrap their heads around all this?
Honestly, education. Don't just skim the headlines.
Don't just ape in.
Exactly. Dig a little deeper. Understand how this blockchain thing actually works.
Because it's more than just magic internet money.
Way more. Look, there's a lot of opinions out there about Bitcoin, about the future of all this. Read them all. Get the full picture.
Don't just listen to one podcast.
Especially not just one podcast. The more you know, the better equipped you are to make your own decisions.
Speaking of decisions, the million-dollar question, literally in this case, is should people be buying Bitcoin?
The million-dollar question that no one wants to answer directly?
Because no one actually knows.
Exactly. But look, here's the thing everyone needs to hear. Bitcoin. Risky. Very risky.
It's not your grandma's savings account.
No, it's more like riding a rocket. Maybe to the moon, maybe straight back down to Earth.
So don't bet the farm.
Unless you've got multiple farms and you're feeling really lucky. Look, diversification is key. Always.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially if that basket is made of volatile digital code.
You got it.
So if someone's thinking about, like, dipping their toes into the Bitcoin waters here,
Yeah.
what's your advice?
Start small. Like embarrassingly small. The amount you're comfortable seeing disappear overnight and not even flinch.
Because it might.
It very well might. And do your research. Don't just follow the hype train. Make sure you understand what you're investing in.
And most importantly, don't FOMO into it.
The fear of missing out is a powerful drug. Don't let it cloud your judgment. At the end of the day, This is your money, your future. Make your own informed decisions.
Solid advice, as always. And, it strikes me that whether Bitcoin hits $1 million or not, just having this conversation is important.
Absolutely. We're talking about the future of money, about technology changing the world.
That's huge.
It is. And yeah, Bitcoin might be the poster child right now, but this whole thing has got people thinking differently. That's what matters.
So who knows what the future holds, right? Maybe we'll all be using Bitcoin to buy our flying cars. Maybe we'll have something totally different.
That's the exciting part. We're still writing the rules of this game.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to log off and let everyone else chime in. What do you think about all this? Bitcoin to the moon? Or is this whole thing headed for a crash landing? Hit us up on social media and let us know your biggest takeaways from today. For now, this has been The Deep Dive.
Catch you next time.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and until next time, keep asking those big questions.